This is Untitled, the Atari 8-bit podcast.
Atari was bleeding. We used to kid that there was a guy that would go up on the roof every day at noon and toss $1 million off the roof and come back inside.
This is Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast. I'm Kevin Savitz. John Skruch worked at Atari from 1982 under Warner Communications all through the Tramiel era until 1998 when the company was owned by JTS. During that time, he was operations manager for Atarisoft, the arm of Atari that produced software for competing computer systems, software product manager for the Atari 8-bit computer line, and director of licensing. He was involved with the design and development of the XM301 modem and the Atari Lynx game system. This interview took place on March 18, 2017.
1982 was when I started at Atari, and I basically followed a boss of mine from a consulting engineering firm to Atari. He was hired to do a online banking project that Atari had going called the Pronto project. That was basically a cartridge that went into the 8-bit computer that allowed you to do banking. That project was shelved. I guess it wasn't viable for whatever reason. So we ended up doing production engineering for the cartridge and disk and tape lines for the 8-bit computer.
Okay, cool. So who was the boss that you followed?
Oh God.
Okay.
I'll remember his name probably 10 minutes after this is over.
Sure.
I'm terrible with names. I'm great with faces. I'm terrible with names.
So where did you come from before Atari?
I came from a company called Magnuson Engineers. Started in 45. Did all sorts of consulting engineering work. Ended up concentrating mostly on food processing and small parts handling systems. Like I designed a machine to put together Papermate pens, ballpoint pens at about 120 a minute, stuff like that. So it's kind of fun. Cool. I have a mechanical design background from my schooling. Went to University of Maryland and De Anza College, and kind of have a mechanical bent. So that worked really well. And doing stuff with cartridges was always fun.
Sure. All right, so you came to Atari specifically to work on the Pronto cartridge, and did you work on it for a while before that was... No,
by the time I got there, it was gone. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, we got involved in cartridge production lines. Actually started a prototype cartridge facility in with a company called Selectron that did contract manufacturing in Sunnyvale, California, which is where Atari was headquartered. Kind of putting stuff together. Had a Selectron badge, so I got to sneak into like the Activision facility and see what they were doing, that kind of stuff.
Nice, cool. So it sounds like you were involved with the physical aspect of making cartridges, building cartridges.
Exactly. Yeah. In fact, that led me into being the operations manager for Atarisoft when that was started. I was, keeping an eye on all the production areas for the cartridges, the Commodore cartridges and VIC-20 and the disc production at various places in the country.
Oh, neat. So tell me something that might be interesting or surprising about that the typical Atari user might not know that went into a cartridge. What was something that was interesting or difficult or challenging to make a cartridge work and stay in one piece?
Well, the funny thing was the Atari cartridge was like overcomplicated. Okay, you had a metal heat sink back. You had a spring-loaded door to protect the cartridge edge, and this added like 4 or 5 parts to a typical cartridge, and you didn't need them. I mean, a two-piece plastic clamshell, the circuit board, and electronic components were really all you needed. But Atari over-engineered everything back when. It was funny taking a look at a disassembled Atari 800 next to a disassembled Commodore 64. The part count and the complexity was night and day between the two. They actually made money. We actually didn't make money.
Yeah. Those cartridges were. I mean, they were metal, and then they had this little door that covered the ROM chip part, and then sometimes you get a cartridge from some other company. It's just this hunk of plastic with the chip hanging out, and they both worked fine.
Yeah, and frankly, that was just fine. I mean, the trapdoor deal was, for some reason, somebody said, "Oh, gee, we really need to, protect the cartridge edge." Well, if it's in the housing far enough, nobody's going to be able to touch it. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of, self-protected. So, we eventually made that go away. Like the Atarisoft cartridges never had stuff like that.
Right.
It was a waste.
So you were operations manager for Atarisoft, which meant, I guess, making cartridges and discs for Commodore and VIC-20 and TI and a bunch of other platforms.
Yep, IBM and ColecoVision.
Right.
We did a little bit of Intellivision, but that didn't really sell very well.
So was there different challenges there in making the cartridges work and fit and make sure they were compatible with all those non-Atari systems?
Well, what was interesting was it was a unique business model. The typical production of a game involved somebody programming the game and handing the code off to somebody that's going to manufacture the cartridge or disc or what have you. What we did was we had the programming houses actually produce finished product for us. We didn't buy programming. We bought cartridges. We brought discs fully packaged and ready to put on shelves. So they were responsible for their own manufacturing.
That does not sound typical. Interesting.
No, it wasn't. And I had a little army of QA inspectors that hung out at the developers' manufacturing facilities. Well, first off, we qualified the manufacturing facilities, and then we had guys inspecting stuff before it hit our warehouse. So if their production was substandard, we didn't accept it, and it never got to us. There were actually Atari facilities that produced substandard product, and it ended up getting shipped all the way to the United States. At which point it was not really any good, and it was cost ineffective to send it back.
Sure.
So for us in Atarisoft, we never accepted the product if it was defective. That was kind of fun. That we had one in Flint, Michigan, and as a California guy going to Flint, Michigan in the middle of winter, minus 25 degrees, and having no winter clothing as classified by the East Coast was not the most fun in the world.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was good. We put out a lot of good product. Mm-hmm. And we the Atarisoft group, we were basically just a few people that were kind of hidden in the marketing department of the home computer division. And, people left us alone. It was great.
Nice. I always kind of wondered if there was any pushback from management at Atari saying, on one hand, I can see them going, well, we want to make software for all the platforms. And I can totally, though, see management going, we should only be making software for our own computer. Did you ever get pushback about that?
Oh, yeah. It was, we had religious wars, absolutely. Then there was the other one, aside from the make it for them, make it for us. Mm-hmm. There was the we should be making it in Atari facilities. Mm-hmm. So we challenged Atari production people to show us what our costs would be if we made it internally rather than externally. And they actually couldn't come up with quote unquote real numbers. It was kind of trust us, we'll be good, we'll be cheap.
Right.
No, show us, because we can show you exactly what we're paying to the penny through our system. So Ray Kassar and folks basically, pulled the manufacturing people aside and said, look, leave them alone. They know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. They know what they're doing better than you know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So just cool it.
Nice. Okay, so you're at Atarisoft and you're churning out cartridges, and then what? What changed? Where'd you go next? And why?
Well, what changed was the sale of the company
to JTS,
to the Tramiels.
Okay.
We basically, Atari was bleeding. We used to kid that there was a guy that would go up on the roof every day at noon and toss $1 million off the roof and then come back inside. And we were literally losing more than $1 million a day.
Yeah.
So people kept getting laid off. When I started, there was 10,000 people in the Valley, Silicon Valley here. We had 60 buildings. I made $40 a week in average mileage just going between buildings doing my job.
Wow.
So we were pretty spread out. It got down to 1,400 people roughly. Then the Tramiels came in. That got knocked down to 400, and then that got knocked down to 250.
So how did you? I mean, you started, I believe, in 1982 under Warner, and then the Tramiels took over, and then you were there for their whole reign, and then you were there until 1998 when, after or during the sale of JTS to JTS. How did you survive? Because I've talked to so many people who their story ends in 94 or whatever when the Tramiels show up.
Right. Well, I had a technical background, and what I did for the first 3/4 of a year under the Tramiels was I renegotiated all the development contracts that Atari had. There was a lot of product being developed, and we used to joke that the contract, the typical Atari contract, had check boxes, check $1 million, $2 million, or $3 million, and check only one box, but just check a box and away you go.
Right.
So I had to basically sit down with these developers and say, well, that was all well and good. Party's over. Let's talk, and let's get real about it. And, we canceled a lot of things, had a number of lawsuits, and brought only a few things to market based on these outrageous development contracts.
Sure.
I mean, give you an example. There was and don't ask me his name because I don't remember, but there was an Israeli artist, kind of a kinetic artist, that had developed was developing basically a offshoot of the Paint program, and he was going to do basically a painting for each box top of the product. So I mean, these were and it was like we were somehow going to sell a paint program to consumers for like $500 a pop, but you got this really cool little painting with it. Right. It's like, no, we're not doing that. I mean, this is one of the reasons that Atari was losing money. They were doing crazy stuff. Were
the Tramiels terrible, or were they? Did they do what needed to be done to make that company survive a little longer? Which camp do you fall into?
There are some of both.
Yeah.
Jack was very ruthless. His philosophy, and we used to have arguments. His philosophy was, I win, you lose. And I used to tell him, that in the software dealings, the contracts that we did start, the idea was if you have a fair deal and both parties profit, you're probably going to do it again. if you do a deal where you profit and the other party doesn't profit, that was a one-shot deal. You'll never work with them again. And he used to get mad at me about that, but that's okay. So when we were doing software, and that was the good thing was he understood he understood the hardware side of it. He didn't really understand the software side of it, so he kind of left us alone. So we got to do a lot of stuff that that was needed to be done, which was good. So in that respect, we had a good relationship. I had a very good relationship with the sons. Mm-hmm. But at times, I saw us do things that were not done the way I would have done things. Mm. So, there was some of both going on.
Right. For example?
Well, let's see. Let me stop and think here for a second. Sure. Some of the purchasing that was done for like components and things, they just beat people to death on the pricing. So, maybe so the person that was supplying the mechanical parts, maybe cut a corner or two here. One of my favorite ones we had a little miniature 2600, the Atari 2600 Junior.
Sure.
That the Tramiel Atari was still manufacturing, and there were counterfeits that popped up out of the East, and some of them were actually using parts made on Atari molds. So what was happening was, the factories were making parts for us during the day, mm-hmm. and making parts for the counterfeiters at night.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, and if you had, a loyal provider that was, making a decent profit, you probably wouldn't.
They probably wouldn't have to do that, right? Yeah. So somehow you got from the hardware cartridge manufacturing things, and you moved into being a director of software development.
Right.
And so I'd like to talk about that. What did that involve? What did you do? Tell me stories.
Well, let's see. Started off as the guy responsible for the 8-bit computer. Okay, that's everybody was off running around doing ST stuff, mm-hmm. and somebody needed to carry the flame for the 8-bit. So I was the guy, doing stuff like bringing out the XM301 modem. Mm-hmm. I got kind of ambitious with that one. I think I stuffed about 3 times the value of the modem in free stuff in the box. So it was a deal. That was neat. We just got all sorts of companies throwing AOL free this and CompuServe free that into the box. Mm-hmm. So doing hardware pieces and software pieces. Finished up a bunch of games for the 8-bit. Did stuff like take a partially completed game based on Last Starfighter movie and turn that into Star Raiders 2.
Right. Nice.
Because there was stuff there, but there was not, in my mind, there was not enough of a game there to release it as a game. Mm-hmm. And the license really didn't matter. I mean, we proved that with ET that the license doesn't mean diddly if you don't have a good product behind it.
Right.
So rather than try and shoehorn Last Starfighter into a cartridge, we said, look, let's take an original that doesn't require a royalty, mm-hmm. and make the best game we can out of the code we had. Hmm. And that's where Star Raiders 2 came from.
Yeah. Some people feel that Star Raiders 2 was one of the best games ever. Star Raiders original was one of the best games ever created for that machine, and Star Raiders 2 did not live up to the legacy of the name.
Yeah, we tried. Got to tell you, when I got my first Star Raiders cartridge and plugged it into my 400, which was my first Atari computer, mm-hmm. I saw God. That was just, hyperspace was just amazing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hard
to top.
Yeah.
Hard to top.
Yeah. Something you may not know, within the last couple of years, it was discovered that the Atari's arcade group had developed a Star Raiders 2 follow-up for the 8-bits that really followed the game mechanics of the original Star Raiders, but added new things like landing on planets. And it was discovered recently, and it's pretty amazing. So,
really? God, I'd love to see a copy of it.
Yeah, I'll send you a link to a video of it.
Oh, great! Yeah, I'd like to see that. There was always a contentious relationship between the two groups. See, originally Atari was essentially three independent companies. Mm-hmm. There was the coin-op group, there was the home entertainment group, and there was the home computer group. And I mean, each one of those had their own, purchasing departments and HR, engineering departments, etc. Mm-hmm. So they were easy to split apart because the Tramiels went, hey, we don't want coin-op, we don't know coin-op, we don't want to do coin-op. Mm-hmm. We understand home computers, the game thing, okay, whatever, but yeah, keep the coin-op part. So there was a. We both sides interpreted what they could and couldn't do in their own light. As an example, if they had tried to manufacture a Star Raiders 2 cartridge, mm-hmm. We would have taken them to court. Mm-hmm. Just if for no other reason than general principles.
Sure.
Kind of a thing. In fact, I tried to sell the Atari rights back to Atari Coin-Op because I thought they really all should, kind of belong back together. Mm-hmm. I thought that would have been a nice symmetry.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they're real cheap people, and they didn't want to pay any kind of money for the rights back.
Huh.
So, sorry, didn't happen.
So you said a few minutes ago that you were working on the XE stuff, but the ST had already come out. I mean, did it feel like you were on a sinking ship? That there really was no future in 8-bit at that point, but you had to do it anyway, or did it feel like no, this is a viable, inexpensive product that people want? How did you feel about it at the time?
Some of both. There certainly weren't resources, especially being dedicated to it. Mm-hmm. And I felt that it was getting, passed over, as far as the product line goes. Then I got more involved in the Lynx handheld, and that was probably the best time and the best software I think we developed.
Yeah.
Was for the Lynx handheld. And that's where I really got involved in, being the guy in charge of development. Previous to that, I was just, think of me as a product manager for the 8-bit line. Mm-hmm. But the Tramiels weren't really interested in sinking any kind of money into the 8-bits. So, it was kind of slowly running its course. They were interested in putting some money into the Lynx. Mm-hmm. And I think we did a very good job of building a team, getting some programming done and some fun games.
Nice. Yeah, the Lynx was a fun system.
I think we turned out some of our best product, I think, in that arena. Mm-hmm. And the Jaguar. I got to tell you, the coolest thing about the Lynx to me was that we actually sent a development system to a group in Poland. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Hardware and software, and documentation. Didn't talk to them, no hand-holding, no nothing, and they popped out a very nice game with no, here we got to show you how this works, and we got to show you how that mm-hmm. works. Mm-hmm. It was all just so clean and nicely done that it was easy to develop for.
Nice.
Which is, that's, you don't get that all the time. Sometimes you get hardware that's difficult to program for.
Right. Sure.
And then you have you're oofing more than you're smiling.
Why do you think, in your opinion, did Lynx get trounced by the Game Boy?
Atari got trounced by Nintendo.
Yeah.
It wasn't a matter of this piece versus that piece, because frankly I think the Lynx was a superior product.
Yeah.
But Nintendo, I spent a lot of time in federal court up in San Francisco as a witness to the fact that Nintendo basically did stuff like, you want our product? Well, we need you to dedicate this amount of space in your Toys R Us stores to our product, if you want it.
Mm.
Oh, those other guys? Well, we'd probably take it kindly if you didn't carry them.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was stuff like that going on. It was very discouraging.
And some of that, they might have been cutting edge on that, but things like that are common now. Down to breakfast cereal, you pay for shelf space and that sort of thing. So,
oh yeah, and even when we tried to we spent money for shelf space in Walmart, which was kind of a joke. We really didn't get what we thought we were promised, but yet we spent a lot of money for Walmart shelf space. So, I don't know, karma, whatever.
Right. Let's talk about that modem a little bit. You said, I was looking at your resume and things that said you worked on the modem. I assume that's the XM301 that you had mentioned before.
Yeah.
Tell me something interesting about creating the modem. So you said design and development of the modem and the connected gaming thing that allows you to have 16 simultaneous players. Oh, that's on the Lynx.
Yeah, no, that's Lynx,
right.
And we actually, being able to sit around with 16 people. There was a game, Todd's Adventures in Slime World. Okay, and you could hook up to 16 Lynxes. And there's just something about playing a game where you're walking down a slimy corridor, and here comes somebody towards you, going the opposite direction, and you're all trying to find the exit. And you figure, okay, I'm almost there, and then here comes somebody walking towards you. Was kind of a, oh boy. Yeah, it was kind of fun. You got metagaming too, because what you could do, if you're sitting around, even just two players, you're talking trash while you're playing. That's sort of the thing. And we also, one of the things, I don't know, people may have noticed or not noticed, we always tried to do positive gaming and negative gaming aspects in the Lynx. Okay. Meaning that, positive gaming, you can cooperate with other players. You can, let me give you an example. You could, in Rampage, you could cooperate as monsters to knock down buildings. But there was also a potion in that game that allowed you to become invisible. So you could go around and hit your other players and cause them damage, which is negative play. But at the same time, to balance that, when you hit them, you became visible when you hit them. So if they can figure out where you are, they could gang up on you. So we always tried to add things like that to the games. Now back to the modem. It was we had like this acoustic coupler back in early Atari days, which was very bizarre.
Right.
And we had a high-powered modem going for the ST. We wanted something that ran on the power of the 8-bit, so it didn't require power supply and all that sort of good stuff.
Right.
So it plugged in the port and derived power from the computer, and kind of like a USB connection today, and it worked quite well. It was 300 baud. Yeah, it wasn't the fastest thing in the world, but there really wasn't that many peripherals. There was at that time there was no dedicated Atari modem that would work. So we put that one out, and I thought it worked quite well. At least let you get onto CompuServe.
Sure. Yeah.
Of course, today everything's so extremely fast. It's. I mean, it was funny being able to watch the text crawl across the screen while you were reading it.
Well, 300 baud is about as fast as you can read. So really, why would you need faster?
Well, graphics.
Sure.
I mean, that's the name of the tune today is graphics. We're buying high-end graphics cards for our PCs. To play the latest first-person shooter stuff on our computers. You can't do that stuff with the old technology. 6502 can only do so much.
Sure. Yeah. It says you were also responsible for. You had your hands in a lot of pots. Director of licensing, and you.
Well, that's where I ended up.
Yeah.
Okay, once Atari got sold to JTS. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, prior to that, we were down to a half a dozen people in the old B of A building on Matilda Avenue in Sunnyvale. Mm-hmm. In fact, we used the vault for our office supplies.
Of course.
You got a big honkety thing with a giant steel door. What else do you put in it?
Right. Pencils.
Office supplies.
Yeah, sure.
So, we were virtually gone. I was finishing up a last couple of 8-bit games and Jaguar games. Sam, the president, had a heart attack. Okay, and he was slightly younger than me, and that freaked the family out that he was so young.
Yeah.
And he had a heart attack. So he was off the scene for months, and Jack basically took over. And Jack said, I don't know this game stuff. I don't know any of this. We're going to go back to something I understand, which is white box hardware. Mm-hmm. So that's where he merged Atari with JT Storage. Now, I was the last Atari guy in the back in the corner in the dark licensing stuff. Mm-hmm. I was licensing, over in Europe. There's a line of Atari T-shirts. There were things like Atari fragrances. Let's see, Activision picked up a couple games, and in the at the very end, I was licensing a couple titles to Hasbro, and Hasbro said, "Well, hey, why don't we just take it all?" Mm-hmm. So I basically turned the lights out on Atari by licensing all of the creative, all the intellectual property of Atari to Hasbro. At which point, I lost my job.
Right.
As a lot of other people did at JT Storage, which then went bankrupt.
Right. Yeah.
So it was kind of literally I was in the back in the corner in the dark just doing my Atari thing.
Wow.
The last person doing it, because certainly JT Storage didn't have any interest in it.
Sure.
They just wanted the money that Jack threw at them.
Mm-hmm. For what it's worth, the company that calls itself Atari now, all they have is licensing and T-shirts and watches and various things. That's all it's become.
Yeah, I talked to them, when at the sale, because Hasbro then sold it to Infogrames. Mm-hmm. Infogrames then created an office in New York for Atari. Best part of that for me was I got a copy of a Dragon Ball Z game that they were doing for my son.
Nice.
But they just didn't really make it. Well, there was no soul there. I basically, the soul went away. Because it's the people. People went away, soul went away, and intellectual property is you need the creativity behind it, not just the name.
Right. Exactly. It's exactly what it is.
So,
yeah.
To me, it's in the past. The good Atari is in the past. Whatever's out there now is just a shadow.
Right. So I found a list of cartridges and discs that you worked on, and I don't really know what that means that you work. I mean, it says you worked on Ace of Aces and Fight Night and Airball, a lot of XE stuff. Do you have any stories or memories of these? If I kind of threw out a list of names of games.
You're looking at the list of. See, I was the product manager. Mm-hmm. Okay, I was the guy, making decisions. I wasn't the guy programming. Mm-hmm. I was the guy, approving box art, manual content. I ran I had under me the QA department that tested the product before it went out. Mm-hmm. I gave final approval to whatever went out. So, just as you have producers today, I was the original producer then. So that's what that all means.
Nice. Does anything stick in your mind?
The other thing too was, I'm sorry. See, we were able to for the XE game system. What I was trying to do was things like Ace of Aces, those kind of games, mm-hmm. was like reverse license instead of licensing out, license in mm-hmm. Titles that had been done for the 8-bit computer. Put them in a cartridge so that they could be played on the XE game system. Mm-hmm. So that's what that whole thing was about.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it was basically just change the code if it needed to be changed to work with in an XC world as opposed to a 400-800 world, and put it out there on cartridge for that system.
Does anything stick in your mind? Can you remember anything that you tried to produce or wanted to produce but ultimately had to cancel?
Well, no, it wasn't so much a matter of cancel as a matter of, when the bottom dropped out, as it were. These things just weren't finished. They weren't completed. I had a version of Xenophobe on the 8-bit that was 3/4 of the way ready. That never saw the light of day.
Right.
Things like that. Oh God, what was it? There was like a fantasy role-playing game for the Lynx that was just a couple of cartridges, prototype cartridges, but never made the light of day. Mm-hmm. Things just that didn't get completed.
Mm-hmm. What do you do today?
Today I am a sales manager at a company called, interestingly enough, 8x8. Mm-hmm. Just like a 8x8 pixel. And they are a voice over IP internet phone company.
Cool.
So we manufacture. Well, we're like the original voice over IP phone service. They started in 1985, and they actually started as a 8-bit graphics card company.
Huh.
So, and then they got into IP telephony, and they hold like 110 patents for phone service. We've gone worldwide. When I started with them 6 years ago, they had like 200 people. Now they've got over 1,000, and they're the company's worldwide. So it's been great. It's been growing. Folks kind of remind me of the old Atari days because there's a lot of fun. There's a looseness to it that's very much like a game company would be, and yet we're making money hand over fist. So it's being done right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so what haven't I asked you about the Atari days that I should have?
Oh Lord, I don't know. 20 years ago, it's definitely in the past.
Yeah.
I know there's some folks that still kind of live there, but I myself have moved on to other things. I enjoy learning. I enjoy learning about technology, and one of the cool things about Atari to me was the technology was always evolving. I mean, heck, we started doing IBM games, on a IBM PC with the cards where you had to set the jumpers on them and all that sort of good stuff. Mm-hmm. And today you got plug and play, and you've got speeds that are insane relative to the 8088 processors back then. No monochrome green screens. I don't think you could buy one of those if you wanted to. For a modern day computer. Mm-hmm. So it's everything keeps evolving. Games are certainly evolving. I mean, you look at some of the 8-bit stuff. I even did a couple 8-bit projects, and 2600 projects when I say 8-bit. Sorry. Mm-hmm. And looking at that technology, and having to do a beam chaser, and create a game in 4K. Oh, and then we went to 8K, which was just, oh my God, we got 8K worth of space to do a game in. That's phenomenal. It's just funny how perspectives change.
Absolutely. So if you could send a message to the Atari 8-bit users that still exist, and you can right now, what would you tell them?
I'd tell them, keep going. Keep going. There were some good games. To play a game, it doesn't require photorealistic graphics. Gameplay is gameplay, regardless of the representation on the screen. And if it's fun, enjoy it. Enjoy the heck out of it.
Awesome. I think I have what I need, John. Thank you so much.
Okay, Kevin. Well, thank you, and take care.
If you enjoy these interviews and would like to contribute, there are 2 ways you can help. You can help fund these interviews directly by contributing to my Patreon. A small monthly contribution will help offset the expenses of making these oral history interviews. Contribute at patreon.com/Savitz. Or make a tax-deductible contribution to the Internet Archive, a nonprofit digital library that has done incredible things to preserve computer history. Make your tax-deductible contribution at archive.org/donate. Thanks.